Hello everybody, welcome to Midwest Imagery. I've been showing you how to make better pictures and understanding the three essential elements of photography. Those three essential elements that we need to understand are the exposure triangle, metering for exposure and setting our exposure controls, and understanding rules of composition. Today I'd like to show you a little bit about some compositional rules and some examples of those rules in effect. And once we start seeing how we can really compose our pictures better, this is where it's really going to make a big difference in your photography. So let me get set up and I'll be right back. All right then, I'm back to show you and talk about some composition rules. Some of those rules are simplicity. You like to keep your shots simple. Make the exposure simple. Let your viewers know just what it is that they're going to be looking at. The rule of thirds divides your viewfinder into a tic-tac-toe grid where there are two horizontal lines and two vertical lines. And the idea is that we want to start getting all of our subjects out of the dead center of the shot. We'll move our horizon lines down if we want to convey depth and distance, or if we have a really nice sky that we want to show in the image. Likewise, we move our horizon lines up if we want to show that same depth and distance, but maybe we don't have such a great sky. You can move your subjects over to a vertical line, which leaves dead space on one side or the other. Also in the rule of thirds, we could use this for portraits, have our subjects on one of the vertical lines, and that gives us a nice dead space. Balance refers to the balance between light and dark, the balance between objects and their subjects in the shot, the balance between colors in the image. Framing can be a branch hanging over the scene that our eye looks right through the framing device and sees the scene. It can be looking out of a window, through a door opening. It can be framed between two tree trunks. Any number of different devices can be used for framing. Leading lines might be a roadway, it might be a river, it could be an expansion joint in the concrete that leads our eye into the shot. Leading lines are everywhere. Start looking around and you'll see lines, sidewalks, roadways, stairs, winding roads, rivers. They're everywhere. Probably the most important one is dead center is deadly. We don't want our subjects to occupy the center of our images, with a very few exceptions. Wildlife can live in the middle, portraits can be in the middle of our shots, but most of the time, dead center is deadly. And here's an example of a simple shot. This shows us a couple of rules of composition. We're seeing the horizon line is very low here, which gives us this powerful, great depth in sky, and our subject is on one of the 1/3 vertical lines dividing the image up, which then gives us a balance of all of this dead space out over in this area here. It helps to balance the brightness and the darkness. Plus, there are some leading lines of the reflections on the water that lead us a little bit into the image if we needed that here. But right now this subject, these fireworks, grab our eye right away. All this dark background helps to balance it out. This was an exposure made at ISO 200, f/22. It was 12-second exposure, which means my shutter was open for several different bursts here, as we see in this picture. Here's an example of the rule of thirds. It was a blizzard, and we were playing his favorite game, which is Find It, in a blizzard, and he was excelling. What we're seeing here is, here again we have our vertical line here. He's sitting right on that third line. This gives him room to look into the shot And this bright red sweater helps to balance the shot along in here too. And another thing I'm going to point out here is there is some separation here. And that little bit of separation between this apparent horizon line and his head helps us to define depth in the image as well. Another example of the rule of thirds. Notice the horizon line is very low in this shot, very close to the third grid. The leading line leading us out into here is the dock, and then that just gives us this big sky, and we can see lightning and rain pouring off into the distance. And it looks like it was a powerful storm, but the good thing is we had the beach to ourselves. Here's another example of the rule of thirds. The rule of thirds is going to be probably the first compositional rule that we'll start using a lot in our images. This shot I made from the inside looking out of a window. The horizon is very low, and this was shot at ISO 100, 2.8 for 6 seconds. Of course, this would be on a tripod. Here's another example of the rule of thirds. The horizon line low gives us a big sky, a third vertical line right through here, and it just allows us to kind of look around in the scene. Rule of thirds and dead space. Notice how I have the subject on one of the vertical lines of the rule of thirds, and all of this other dead space just kind of helps to focus our eyes on her. I'm focusing on this eye that's closest to my lens. We can see face, hair, sweater, necklace, everything else is in good enough focus. We even have a little bit of focus here behind her. Here's an example of balance in our picture. The balance between the lights and the darks. And we have some colors that are complementing each other. And we have leading lines, expansion joint in the middle of this walkway. There's white in the gulls are white against the darkened shadows. It was a very bright day. My ISO was low at 200, 5.6 still gave me a 3,000th of a second. Here's another shot that shows balance in its composure as well. We have balance between the light and the darks, and we have balance between the colors and the highlights. Here's an example of framing. The light was pouring in these church windows, falling on the pews. Love the Gothic windows. I wanted to put something out here that looked like, that mimicked the Gothic windows, hence this scene that I put in the windows, because the original scene was cluttered and crowded and you really couldn't see the windows at all. This is an example of framing as well. Using natural elements to frame the scene will help direct your viewer's eye to the focal point of your image. And as we can see, this cottonwood is coming up, dangling over, but framing very nicely the monument at Devil's Tower. This is another example of framing. There's a couple of things going on here. The branches are arching over the subject. The dwarf Korean lilac on a standard covered with lights here. Also in this picture there's a tiny little bit of separation from all of these branches on this lilac between the trunk on this river birch here, so they aren't blocked out or clipped off. Here's an example of the leading lines. The road is the leading line. The stripes on the road are the leading line. Point us right to this birch tree that was in full color. If the road wasn't enough to direct our eyes, these stripes on the road would point us right to here. I went back to this scene some years later, so it's the same shot, two different viewpoints, very different moods. Another example of leading lines. Where are the leading lines in this picture? They're all over the place. We have the road, the fog line, the center line, the edge of the road, the ditch, all of these lines leading us into the scene. and right on past our subject where we have to stop and take a look at it on the way to wherever this road takes us. So along with compositional rules, I want to show you some of my early compositional failures. And I'm going to tell you, I had to search really, really hard to find these pictures. Not because I haven't had compositional failures throughout my career, but because when I do get something like that, I just delete it because there's no sense in having it around taking up space. So, what's wrong with this picture? I'll let you tell me. Yeah, that's good too. You're right. The buffalo is dead center in the image, except wildlife can get away with being in the center of the image, but in this case, not so much. And here's what I see wrong with this. Okay, we've got this downed tree running right through the middle of the scene, which then takes us to, what the heck, this buffalo is just completely cut up because there's a portion of a trunk way up here in this corner. We've got a poor headless buffalo calf here, and what the heck is going on right here? The exposure's good though. How about this one? What are we seeing here? Yep, you're right. She is in the dead center, but people can be, portraits can be in the middle of the image here. But what's bothersome here is the depth of field at f11 shows us all the detail in this background too. And now we're trying to, the picture is fighting for our attention. So a couple of ways that we can fix this: move her farther away from the background, stop down our aperture to 5.6 or 4 to blur this back out, or take this into Photoshop and do all of those things without reshooting. Here's a shot in the Little Missouri, late in the afternoon. What does this show us besides it should be thrown away? Okay, we have a leading line that leads us right off the other edge of the frame. The horizon line is kind of like right through here. There's not a whole lot of interest here. There's not a whole lot of interest in the foreground. It just kind of falls flat. There's another attempt at the Little Missouri. Again, we've got our foreground is divided by this river that's shooting right across the scene. We have a tree line that's kind of impeding on the scene. I have a little bit of color on these hills, but the sky doesn't warrant having as much space as it does. It's just kind of another throwaway shot. This one, what do we see here? There's some good elements in it, but overall it fails too. I don't mind this nice rock in the front. I don't actually mind this water here, but where does it go after that? It doesn't go anywhere. Our eye wants to shoot right around here, but we're kind of blocked off by the trees in the background, and we don't have any direction for this water to, where is the water going? So it just kind of sits there doing nothing. Here again, look at our horizon line right in the middle of the frame. We have a trail that serves as a leading line that takes us right to nowhere. The clouds and the sky look okay, so we could have lowered this horizon down lower, and then it may have saved it, which it did in later pictures. Another example, different angle, still not quite enough. We have my trail leading us into the image, but then it peters out and doesn't take us anywhere. The horizon line is pretty dang close to the center again. We aren't getting that full distance and depth and scale. Here is another one that's close, but this is as close as I could get to this, and so I'm a little bit down below the subject. That truncates the depth. We have a little bit of depth in the background here where some hills arise from our current horizon line. But again, look at our line is right in the middle of the shot. And there are some ways that we could have fixed this one too, such as I could have added a different sky to it give us a little bit more feeling of depth. Open it up a little bit like this, which makes it a little bit better. And I could have put in a different sky, change the color of the foreground, makes it a little bit better, but maybe not. Some more compositional rules. We need to look for a focal point. We need to keep our eye on the horizon line. Images of landscapes often gain from an impression of depth, and dead center is deadly. What's the focal point in this picture? My ISO is 200. My aperture is f/22, so that I could choke off the light coming in and get as long of exposure as I could in this basically well-lit midway. So 6 seconds on the tripod gives me this orbiter zipping around here like this too. There's something that's out of place in this picture though. You notice this little light over here, how it's just blown out? And all these flags are flapping around like crazy because it was kind of breezy. Why is this moon well exposed? It's because I put it there. Because the orbiter needs something to orbit. How about this one? This shot has great depth, low horizon, big sky, lots of dead space, and there's separation between most of the foremost prominent windmills. So we see separation here. This isn't overlapping that or this. There's separation here, separation here, separation here, separation here. Where we get into the far distance, it doesn't matter if there's separation or not, but this helps to give us depth and distance. And this is a shot made with 105 frames stacked together. So that's what gives us each individual blade of this windmill. I'd left my tripod at home, so I had to set this up on the hood of my car and set it up and released it with a cable, and I just kept click, 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 click until I had 105 of them and pieced it together. Here's the horizon line again. Keep that horizon line low. This sky was on fire. There are hundreds of geese coming into this cornfield in the distance. I don't know if you can see them on this image or not, but they're flying in here. This shot shows us depth and scale and distance. I set this up because the curves of these clouds ended right up at the top of this scene. The light was going quick, so I made this shot, and this is how it turned out. But rules are made to be broken. Anybody tell me what this is? Yeah, they're lights. The lights on our Christmas tree threw it out of focus. There's no rule of thirds. There's no focus even. There's no leading lines. There's no depth. There's a little bit of depth here. There is a lot of balance, but other than that, no. And yet this still works really well this way. But you have to learn the rules before you can start breaking them. So let me get this taken down and I'll be right back. Okay, that was some rules of composition and examples of composition that is what's really going to make our pictures much better. Few rules that are most important to start with would be the rule of thirds, simplicity, dead center is deadly, balance, framing, and separation. We can work with those right there. And starting to see compositions in your images takes us to the next step where you are truly making pictures now instead of taking pictures. And when we start to see it in that fashion, then our pictures really start improving. And if you have any questions, let me know, and I'll do my best to get back to you. But that's going to end it for this time. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.